Nigerians.
And to ensure compliance with the provisions of the Electoral Act and other extant laws governing electioneering campaigns and broadcasts, the various agencies saddled with the responsibility to monitor the important electoral process, including National Broadcasting Commission, have continued to engage stakeholders on the need to abide by the provisions of the law and broadcast code in disseminating election campaigns.
Now, at one of such engagements with stakeholders in the polity, the Senate President Ahmad Lawan, Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila of the House of Representatives, and some religious leaders asked political actors to imbibe issue-based campaigns and shun hate speech.
And in his words, the Senate President said, and I quote, rather than emphasize discussion on policy positions to address many of the social and economic challenges we face, we are engaged in frivolous, illogical, and sensational exchanges. Unquote.
Well, that's right. That's part of what we've been hearing in terms of the insults that some of the spokespersons have been exchanging in the lead up to the formal declaration of the campaigns. But one organ that is critical is spreading these campaign messages fast as both the media, print and electronic, in addition, of course, to the social media.
That is where the war is actually, on the social media platform. And so what role should the media play, especially the electronic media, to ensure that hate speech and unguarded statements are not being disseminated to the public? What sanctions are there for violators of broadcast code pertaining to election campaigns?
And how prepared are the agencies responsible for monitoring and enforcement of the broadcast code and other laws governing election campaigns? What should be done to avoid sensationalism and the campaign of calumny during the electioneering period? It's Good Morning Nigeria, the first for the week, a cool Monday morning here in the nation's capital. Welcome to the program. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Juma Yusuf. You're welcome to the program, coming to you live on the network service of the NTA. In line with our tradition, we shall serve you our complimentary segments in the course of the program. But first, the news with Musbau Dan Wahab. Good morning, Musbau.
Good morning, Jumai and Kingsley. Something caught my attention from your banter there. 150 days to campaign. Yeah. It means more resources will be thrown into this, right?
That's 5 clear months.
5 clear months.
5 clear months.
I'm just imagining how heated it's going to be.
No question about that. But at least it's useful. It's useful. If candidates, assuming for presidential candidates, for instance, if you have to pound the campaign trail for 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, you need enough time.
5 months is not even enough.
It's not enough. So we have seen some semblance of pseudo campaigns, if you may, already. But of course, that's part of the worrisome signals that we're getting in terms of hate speech and the illogicalities that we refer to in our banter.
Right, let's see how they're going to leverage on this improved opportunity. And I wish them well. Waiting for a campaign that will be of standard and not a campaign of calumny like you have just said, rightly, Kingsley. Now let's take the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has commended Nigerians living in the United States of America for their exemplary roles they are playing in their different areas of endeavor, urging them to continue in that line to earn more respect of their host. Speaking at a town hall meeting with Nigerians in the diaspora in New York, President Buhari described as pleasing as many have either been elected or appointed into various responsible and competitive positions in the United States.
The country, not forgetting home and working with Nigerians at home to build our country, and this group has been really amazing. Like I said, what is unique about all of them is that they're not just sitting in America. They all have business back home. The doctors are doing things back home, medical missions. They're contributing, helping to raise other young Nigerians. So we keep at it and keep ensuring that we engage our diaspora.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari is back in Abuja after a successful outing of the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, United States. The president was received on arrival at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport by FCT Minister Muhammad Musa Bello, Inspector General of Police Usman Alkali Baba, Director General, Department of State Services Yusuf Magaji Bichi, and other senior government officials. While in New York, the president delivered Nigeria's national statement to the world's largest diplomatic gathering and participated in various high-level events critical to the security and stability of the country as well as socio-economic developments. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports that this year's outing by President Buhari of the United Nations is the last under his administration. And Malcolm, the indivisibility of Nigerian states is a divine creation that cannot be subdued by any force. This message dominated the interdenominational church service in commemoration of Nigeria's 62nd independence anniversary. Vice President Professor Yemi Oshinbajo, Secretary to Governments of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, and heads of security agencies and other top government officials are among those that attended the event.
Shining bright, the nation of God's promises, a nation of opportunities, of equity and justice, a secure and prosperous nation, a nation of laws and righteousness. Even if what we see today seems bleak and dark, we are confident that God, who owns the heaven and the earth, will fulfill his promises concerning this nation.
Lagos State has observed its first ever car-free day to join in the call for a reduction in the emission of greenhouse gas, currently at about 25% in the country. Commissioner for Transportation, Frederick Oladende, said this is pertinent going by the climate change reports.
The high level sea rise, the extreme temperature, and so we need to adapt. And one of the ways of adapting to the climate change that we're experiencing right now, let's rely less on our cars and then more on public transport and non-motorized transport, so that we can begin to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas that we're emitting, especially in the transport sector.
Less than a week after the Nigerian Immigration Service, Kebbi State Command intercepted and handed over a 13-year-old girl, victim of human trafficking, to the National Agency for Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, who was intercepted on her way to Libya. The command has again intercepted 3 other female victims en route to the same country.
It's appalling that with all our efforts, people are being apprehended day by day. Some of those are intercepted now are victims who are going on journey to Libya.
National Population Commission, NPC, and United Nations Population Fund are working out a comprehensive communication strategy to aid effective implementation of publicity, education, and advocacy on the 2023 Population and Housing Census. Chairman of the NPC, Nasir Isa Kwara, at a message development workshop, says having clear message on the objectives of census taken will build public support.
A people-oriented organization like the National Population Commission, constant and effective engagement of people through aggressive publicity and advocacy messaging is a crucial first step it must take in the attainment of its mandate.
All right, that's it on the news for this morning. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll continue with Jumai and Kinsley after this break. Stay with us.
The 62nd Independence Day Celebration Planning Committee announces activities lined up for celebration as follows. Public lecture in commemoration of Nigeria's 62nd Independence Anniversary. Date, Thursday, 29th September 2022. Venue, State House Conference Hall, Abuja. Time 10 a.m. Special Jumu'at prayers. Date Friday 30th September 2022. Venue National Mosque, Central Business District, Abuja. Time 1 p.m. Presidential broadcast. Date Saturday 1st October 2022. Time 7 a.m. Military parade. Date Saturday 1st October 2022. Venue Eagle Square, Central Business District, Abuja. Time 10 a.m. Announcer Planning Committee.
I'm not stalking him. I'm about to serve better breakfast.
Buy any monthly data plan and get up to 5 gigabytes free to use on social media. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Wake up the champion in your child. Give them energy to go further. Milo Active Go and the natural goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa helps wake up the champion in your child.
Milo. When you wake up in the morning before you start your day, breakfast time is chaos time. For work and for play, for a great start to your day, breakfast time is chaos time.
Always start our day with a nourishing Kellogg's breakfast, powered with the goodness of grains and 11 essential vitamins and minerals. Kellogg's makes a great tasting breakfast for all of us.
Breakfast time is chaos time.
The security challenges we have faced as a government have been daunting, from terrorism to banditry, to kidnapping, to separatist violence, to crude oil theft, to armed robbery and Sunday crimes. It's undoubtedly the greatest challenge to the peace and security of our great country since the Civil War of 1967 to 1970. It's the kind of challenge that would have overwhelmed many nations. But thanks to the purposeful leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari, we can say, I want to repeat, that the worst is over, and peace and security are gradually returning to the land.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
When times are tough, we know that as a mother, one thing you should never compromise on is your family's oral health, because they deserve the best. Oral-B, all-round protection. It's great value. It protects your mouth from harmful bacteria and also protects you against tooth holes and gum problems, which can lead to tooth loss. It strengthens your family's teeth and gives them all-round protection. So remember, protect their future. Oral-B for healthier, stronger teeth in just 1 week.
Every day in our country, senior citizens are discriminated against, disparaged, and treated with disdain by those who ought to respect them. We are all complicit in the way we have treated the elderly members of our society as institutions, families, or members of a shared society. Every time senior citizens get offered less than they deserve for the work they do because they are old, poor, and desperate, we are failing them. Senior citizen loses a child, and wow, they must be responsible for their death. Every time a senior citizen gets labeled a witch, is called mad, and shooed out of the way because they have no memory of where they were headed and look unkempt, we are failing them. We say, abeg, it all old, make it do die, make everybody for rest, to ailing parents, uncles and aunts. That's discrimination. That is neglect. When you see an old woman getting beat up and being accused of witchcraft, do not turn the other way. Stop and teach people that white hairs, wrinkles, and hunchbacks are no evidence of witchcraft. Aging comes with a memory decline. Sometimes it's not out of place to have elderly people lose their way, forget details of their lives, and how to properly take care of themselves. When they get to this stage, they deserve your empathy, not scorn. Our ailing fathers, mothers, aunties, and uncles are deserving of quality healthcare and peaceful transition. Make their last moments memorable. Senior citizens have paid their dues. They deserve your care. Stop all forms of discrimination against them today.
Yeah, welcome back. Trade promoters and revenue generating agencies are leveraging on market opportunities, especially after for ease of doing business. Details with Comfort Ahmadu.
There are many issues to look at: regulatory issues, standard issues, technical issues, and all the rest. But more importantly, how do we leverage on the whole the market as this opportunity we have?
The government has continued to coordinate and develop effective reforms that will provide a veritable platform for ease of doing business in Nigeria. Entrepreneurs are leveraging on these opportunities, with the government looking to remove bureaucratic constraints to doing business and export of indigenous products and services.
Is to also build what we call preservative warehouses, where at least you can put all these goods, perishable goods. Such preservative warehouses, as it's been done in Russia and some other places, you can keep the goods for 7, 6, 8 months and it will still be fresh.
With the rising global demand for made in Nigerian goods and services, entrepreneurs and key players in the trade sector are continuously evolving ways to scale up production and supply of Nigerian goods and products to the global market.
You need to bring back your foreign exchange earnings into the country. And recently, the government has been encouraging people that are going to do export. If you bring in dollars into Nigeria, you earn some naira on top of your dollars, apart from the regular exchange rate.
With initiative to drive support for producers of goods that can be exported to earn the needed foreign exchange for the country.
Thank you very much, Comfort Amodo, for the business package. Up next, newspaper review.
I will have some papers this morning to review, and I'll begin with the Daily Trust newspaper. And just below the masthead, we have Nigeria must have national dream identity, as attributed to former President Olusegun Obasanjo, with kickers says country needs unifier to address current disunity. Nigeria's future will be great, coming from Oshimajo. Leadership quality declining, recruitment process faulty. Agbakabo and Jega. Don't get carried away by propaganda. Okonjo Iweala. Find all the details on page 4. Despite high external reserve, forex pressure remains as NPC meets today. Despite high external reserve, forex pressure remains as NPC meets today. Find details on page 20. August revenue drops by 280 billion as FG states local governments share 673.137 billion naira. Details on page 19. Army produces pamphlets to guide officers on elections. Details on page 5. And the picture story you see there, some youths pushing a car trapped in a flooded road along Tude Idiabo Road in Jabi, Abuja yesterday. The rains keep falling, the flood continues. Kinsley, should I take the punch before we take the leadership?
Right, let me catch your breath. Let me take the leadership newspaper. The leadership newspaper is next for us, and on its window page above the name flag of the leadership newspaper says flood kills 7, displaces 2,800 persons in Kwara. Flood kills 7, displaces 2,800 persons in Kwara. 2023, don't vote killers. They hacked me out in 2015. That's according to former President Goodluck Jonathan. And then below the nameplate, say, brace up for harder times in fourth quarter. Man warns manufacturers. Man, of course, is the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. And then the other headlines there on the front page says, 2 days to go. Political parties reject state charges for campaign signage and billboards. 2 days to go. Political parties reject state charges for campaign signage and billboards. There are a number of riders to that. It will make costs of campaigns unbearable for candidates. Presidential and governorship candidates pay between 5 million and 15 million per billboard. Others pay varying amounts. Smaller parties decry high charges of signage by states. Nigeria Air, federal government begins recruitment ahead of takeoff. NEDC tackles climate change with energy-efficient stoves. And 62nd independence, Nigeria will be great again. That's according to Vice President Ushibajo. Do you mind?
Yes, and we have the Punch newspaper here. And above the masthead, we have 37 firms get licenses to produce 762.3 megawatts. Find details on page 6. Police sees 123 old Brussels orders. Begin prosecution. You find the details on page 8. Nigeria's economic outlook uncertain, welfare worsening. That is coming from the World Bank. You find the details on page 25. Muslim ticket, Tinubu Shetima frustrating reconciliation, says Lawal. You find details on page 41. And at the side piece of the Punch newspaper, Gombe, Taraba, Yola, Damatru to experience blackout. Gombe, Taraba, Yola, Damatru to experience blackout. That's coming from the federal government. To find details on page 26. Bandits kill 3, kidnap 8 Zamfara nursing mothers. You find the details on page 16. And the headlines we have from the Punch newspaper, politics and insecurity. Demand for bulletproof vehicles, special security gadgets surges. Demand for bulletproof vehicles, special security gadgets surges. With riders, VIPs, politicians, orders procure armored SUVs, demand overwhelms dealers. Suppliers confirm increased demand, sales, experts worry over killings and kidnappings. Politicians' actions show 2023 poll may not be violence-free. That's coming from the pro-democracy group. And the picture story you see there, celebrations, began yesterday for the 62nd independence of Nigeria, and you can see the picture stories there from Abuja, Lagos, and Port Harcourt. And still on the Nigeria at 62, and ASU strike now. Khan tells federal government. To find details on page 16, and the weekly security review, which you can go over and find out how things have been working out in Nigeria.
All right, Jumai, thank you very much. There are, of course, a number of very interesting stories. Some of them are on the front pages of the papers that we have read out this morning. Others, of course, are not. I think that the lead story of the leadership is a very important one, which is the complaint by various political parties about the charges for campaign signage and billboards. It looks like this has now become another avenue for IGRO by the various states. Now we hear some states are charging amounts per billboard in the state. That's one. And then we also hear that in some states there's a flat rate that for you to post your campaign posters around the states, you must pay a flat rate, namely 10 million naira, for instance, in Anambra. I think there are a number of ways to look at this story. In the first instance, we do know that there is a lot of environmental filth that is generated on account of campaign posters being posted indiscriminately, and usually on walls public structures, on traffic, on road signs, and so on and so forth. And you find that a number of states, I think Lagos took the lead. I've also seen it here in the Federal Capital Territory, usually around the Eagle Square at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. At the end of any major political event, you find that, of course, the environmental sanitation team would normally get around to get those things off the wall. So that costs money. So if that is the reason why they are charging a reasonable amount, then that is understandable. But to say that each campaign billboard would be charged per sum, I think that is rather excessive. I think it's rather excessive. And the question to ask is, what recourse do the political parties have? Is this a matter into which the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission can wade into? Because there appears to be really no, if you may, no reasonability in the charges. Just say, oh, this is what you are going to pay. If a candidate, for instance,
is not cheap.
I agree, but that is not the only avenue for campaigns. I mean, look at you have to have radio jingles, you have to have newspaper advertisements, you also have to have television adverts, you will have rallies, you will have airtime, and so on and so forth. So what we are talking about, the reasonability of the charges. There's no point. There's no point in saying because campaigns are not cheap, therefore you make it. You say each billboard will be
10 million.
No, but 100 million. In some cases, we are hearing that it's between 10 and 15 million. How many billboards does a candidate need to have in a state? That is one. And in some states, let's also be realistic. Let's also be realistic, because these ones that states are busy charging the IGRO, are charging these amounts for the IGRO. Some candidates are forbidden from having their posters or even billboards in the state. So you frustrate them, and so the alibi now will be, oh, you didn't pay, that's why we brought it down, and so on and so forth. So if you have these campaign posters, if you have the billboards all over the place, perhaps it would be useful to go around and count the number of billboards that a candidate has, and then multiply it. If the candidate were to pay that same amount throughout all the states of the throughout all the states of the federation, the question there would be, are you in breach of the provisions of the Electoral Act that delimit the amount that you can spend on election campaigns?
And well, another headline that we need to talk about briefly, Kingsley, is the politics and insecurity. Demand for bulletproof vehicles is going up. It's quite expensive to buy a bulletproof vehicle now, and all these special security gadgets. But if you're in comparison with the billboards, if you can buy the SUVs at this exorbitant price, the billboards is quite cheap, don't you think?
Well, we're having bulletproof now because of the way we have run our country.
Oh.
Because of the way. Some of these persons will tell you, oh, we are having to get bulletproof because we want to take care of the situation. And Senator Ifeanyi Ubah was lucky some weeks ago when he was attacked in Anambra. But you also have to ask yourself, your aides who are with you, the ones who are providing security for you, are they also in bulletproof SUV, or their lives don't matter? So that's the question to ask. Their lives don't matter. We know that things like this obviously will trigger requests for bulletproof SUVs. We just hope that it doesn't get to a situation where they will be campaigning in the APCs. APCs meaning armored personnel carriers. That's what it will be. It will be ridiculous in the first instance to have that. But we also hope that the law enforcement agencies will be on top of their game.
Step up.
So that if there are threats to the lives of politically exposed persons or those who are on the campaign trail, then it becomes a lot easier to take them out into custody well before they cause any harm. And there was a very curious report I read at the weekend, and it had to do with the governor of Borno State. Zulum was quoted as saying in New York at one of the functions during the 77th hunger at which the president was present, and then of course Zulum was amongst others who accompanied the president as part of his delegation. Now Zulum said that 90,000 terrorists have surrendered in 1 year.
Yeah.
It's never happened anywhere in the world.
Never.
90,000. You're going to ask yourself,
that's including their wives and children, no, not just them.
why would there be a presumption that their children are also terrorists?
So but 90,000, where would he keep them in Maiduguri?
Well, that's a pertinent question. I mean, it tells you that probably there was just an assembly line for producing these terrorists. And of course, the radicalization program should also go apace. Whatever measures have ensured that this person surrendered, those measures should also be sustained so that there's no relapse, and then nobody also takes off from that. We got it pressed.
They also say that out of the 90,000, just how many are from Borno State? He even said somewhere from other neighboring countries and from neighboring states and all that.
Well, that's right. But they found an operational
that
base.
was after profiling them.
Yes, they found an operational base in Nigeria. So, and our target should be as much as possible to reduce their numbers. They reduce their numbers through various measures that the security agencies and the governments have taken.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't matter where they really come from. Over the weekend, there were reports, of course, I'm sure you saw that on the social media, of an alleged kidnapper from Bayelsa State who was said to be an Abuja big boy. Probably born sometime
before he was arrested.
Born in 1986. He says he's a big boy and showering gifts and being a big spender in clubs and so on and so forth. Of course, he had in one of the videos he was heard admitting that he participated in the kidnap of 2 persons. We hope he will have his day in court, and all those who, of course, who were with him in the nefarious business will also have the time to answer under the law.
We take a break. When we return, a conversation will begin. Don't go away.
If you want to become something, become a child again. Why be a patient? If you must worry, then worry about winning. Why worry about germs? When you come home, bring tales and stories. Why bring in germs?
Shield your families from germs. When Dettol is a part of every household bucket, then you and your family can stay protected from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Everyday use of Dettol keeps my loved ones protected.
Wake up the champion in your child. Give them energy to go further. Milo Active Go and the natural goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa helps wake up the champion in your child. Milo.
This blessing be yours, forever to keep a calm and peaceful sleep.
Removes mosquitoes so you can sleep a calm and peaceful sleep. Good night, Electric.
All I do is win. I wake up, I win. I close my eyes, and I win. Keep up on me, come on, let's keep running to the world. Independent women, come on, now let's unite. I'ma keep running to the world. Stop.
Wow, you look great. Did you just come from the salon? Darling superstar, great birthday, salon fresh, no matter what.
My son has always dreamt of being in the spotlight. That's why I give him Bornvita for everyday vitality. That gives him the strength to pursue his dreams. Bornvita, strength to dream.
Critical military objectives of total defeats of the terrorists in the Northeast is already been achieved. Synchronized group and air operations have continued to inflict huge casualties on the terrorists, and have been forcing many of them, including their commanders and emirs, to surrender in droves with members of their families. Whilst areas where terrorists hitherto had some freedom of actions are being cleared, and socio-economic life is gradually returning to the most parts of the Northeast. As while internal displaced persons are now returning to their ancestral homes to start life all over in dignity under safe and more secure environment.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You're welcome back. Now, in line with INEC guidelines for 2023 electoral activities, political campaigns are to commence on Wednesday this week. And correspondent Governor Ta'ala gives us an insight into preparation ahead of the flag off of the electioneering campaign.
Barely 2 days to the commencement of electioneering campaigns for 2023 general elections, the 18 political parties have constituted their campaign councils to market their programs and manifestos to enable them get votes from the electorate in the forthcoming polls. According to Electoral Act 2022, the electioneering campaign is to last for 150 days, unlike the previous exercise, which was 90 days. Already, the atmosphere is becoming charged ahead of the flag-off of the campaigns. As a way of ensuring hitch-free campaigns, Section 92 of the Electoral Act makes it mandatory that a political campaign or slogan shall not be tainted with abusive language directly or indirectly. This, no doubt, is aimed at ensuring violent-free campaigns. Already, some agencies responsible for the smooth conduct of the campaigns are engaging stakeholders on the need to play the game according to the rules.
Media outreach are definitely ensuring good governance.
I want to also declare that measures are put in place to ensure peaceful campaigns devoid of surgery.
Now, to ensure the use of social media is not abused in the course of the campaigns, what measures can the broadcast industry put in place to regulate negative utterances? What provisions are there to ensure balance and fairness to all to avoid biased reportage? Could debates feature as accountability mechanisms for informed decisions on who to vote for? To these issues, guests shall provide answers and more shortly.
All right, with us in the studios now to discuss issues around the political campaigns and the 2023 elections, let's welcome Susan Obi. Susan Obi is Director, Investigation and Enforcement at the National Broadcasting Commission. Ms. Obi, we're glad to have you this morning.
Good morning.
Okay. Also here with us in the studios is David Akoji, who is Special Assistant to the Director General of the National Orientation Agency, and is also a specialist in strategic communication.
Good morning.
Akoji, glad to have you this morning.
Thank you very much.
And also joining us in the conversation from our Kaduna studio is Professor Bashir Ali, Head of Department Mass Communication, Kaduna State University. It's a pleasure to have you join us. From Ojo is Professor Lai Osho, School of Communications, Lagos State University. Professor Lai, it's good to see you.
Good morning. Thanks, Jimmy.
All right, Professor Lai Osho, let's just suggest that you look directly into the camera of your Zoom. Because you're looking out of the camera, you're looking out of the screen, right? That's right. So we can see you a lot better now. But if you frame yourself much better, I'm sure that will be to the delight of our viewers. So, madam and gentlemen, we're glad to have you with us in the studios. The formal flag off of electioneering campaigns will be on Wednesday, but we do know already that the air has been filled with some semblance of campaigns. But this is the formal flag up where you'll be having political rallies and speechification and all that. Let's begin with the Head of Department of Mass Communication at Kaduna State University, Professor Bashir Ali. Professor Bashir Ali, some persons argue that 2023 elections will be like no other in the recent history of our country. What should be our concern with regard to political broadcasts?
Well, our major concern should be
that of whether or not that we have the political will to enforce all those very good conditions which have been, laid down. I believe that it is not lack of training or lack of understanding which are our major problems. Our major problems are the political will. Whether the politicians themselves, whether the media, whether the NGOs, and us have the political will to do what is written down, what is stated that we should do. These are the major problems. These should be the major challenges. Are we ready? Yes, we may be ready, but do we have the political will to do that? If we remember, if we consider the fact that in the past, there were similar kind of conditions, but there were other intervening variables which prevented the media from doing their job. And I am afraid that it may be possible that no matter how well prepared we are, these conditions may still be there. And if care is not taken, if we have not taken care of these problems, we will still arrive at the same conclusions and the same results which we obtained in the previous campaigns. These are my concerns.
It's a high level of. You want to ask him a follow-up question?
No, I just wanted Professor Layo to also pitch in on what should be concerning in terms of political broadcasts ahead of the former flag off of electioneering for the 2023 elections. Professor Layo.
I think that we are witnessing what some people have called permanent campaigns. The campaign has already started, despite the fact that the INEC said it should be Wednesday. So we know the campaign has started. But it appears to me that we are the supporters of various parties and individuals are the one driving the campaigns so far, not the political parties and, what you have. So it seems to me that we are getting more and more people, ordinary people, the electorate, the citizenry, are getting more and more involved in political activities, unlike before. Because if you look at what is happening, all the marches and things like that, the conversations on the social media, you will notice that most of these things are being driven by, the people, the ordinary people, who are not necessarily card-carrying members of any political party, but there's been so much, there's so much passion and emotion, going around. And that seems to me something quite novel, in this election cycle that we are going through. So by the time the campaign starts, I think we may likely see more of the involvement of the ordinary people in the electioneering campaigns that we are going to witness between now and early next year, when the elections will actually take place.
Thank you, Professor. So let me come back to the studio, and Susan Obi, let me bring in the lady in now. Can just concentrate on the man. Are we going to see an unusual way of campaigning this time around?
Well, I don't know if it's going to be unusual, because each election has its own dynamics.
What I'm trying to say is, from apart from the giving Maggie, rapper, rice, are we going to have an issue-based campaign now? And what will the NBC be doing to ensure that it doesn't go overboard?
That is exactly what the NBC would want to have: responsible coverage of the elections, responsible campaigns, responsible coverage by the broadcast stations. So it's at the moment, the commissioner has observed that the media has done a great deal to sensitize the populace, to get them to get their PVCs, to be aware of the trends at the moment. So people have been sensitized to know that this is an election and they have their roles to play. We commend the media for the voter education thus far. The needs, the timetable has been made known to them. People are sensitized to know what the parts they ought to play at each time. The Commission is desirous that there should be responsible coverage of these elections. It should be issue-based broadcast, issue-based campaigns, issue-based programs. So even when stations have guests on air, like the code advises, that partisan broadcasts should be those that discuss manifestos and not those that come to, run down the opponents and all that. So we're expecting that. That is why the Commission has had sensitization programs in 3 locations, in Kano, in Lagos, Enugu, and today in Lagos, to get broadcasters to realize the roles they need to play. So we're expecting something better this time around, not what we had previously.
Okay, well, we'll come to what you had previously. Perhaps we should actually ask you that question now.
How was it previously?
What are you moving away from?
We're starting early to talk about, to talk to broadcasters about, now, like you said, now with the Electoral Act, we have 150 days of campaigns. So it gives ample time to the broadcasters to play around, have their advertisements, all in decent language, not produced by the station, not exceeding 60 seconds. And also, we'll talk about the responsibilities now for the broadcasters at this time. They should engage a lot more in, discussion programs that give their, there should be an array of aspirants being allowed to come and talk, discuss what they have, so that people are better informed to make their right choices. People know now that we expect that broadcasters would avail the populace of the information so that they realize that when they vote now, they could have a good governance in the next 4 years. People are being sensitized to know that truly they need to vote. So, and we're moving away from, we talk about, previously we have had issues of hate speech and fake news. A lot of times reliance on the social media. The social media has come to stay with us. We had an experience when Professor Laosho spoke. He talked about that it's beyond training. And we saw that too, that even though when the elections held in Ekiti this year, the National Broadcasting Commission had a sensitization workshop ahead of the training, we still had instances of broadcasters violating the provisions of the code. So we are hoping that this time around, as we remind us of what's expected of us, we'll be able to conform to the rules as expected.
All right, thanks. We'll return to you shortly. David Akoji, of course, you're from the National Orientation Agency. Are you in on the electoral campaigns in terms of helping to superintend the perimeter of the campaigns by the political parties and their candidates, or this is a matter that is being left to the candidates and their supporters?
Like you said in the preface to this conversation, the campaigns that actually started, in various guises. We're seeing all sorts of marches, on various streets across the states, and then we're seeing followers of various candidates also putting out all kinds of narratives, out in the public space. So at the National Orientation Agency, we anticipated all of this. We are concerned. We are concerned of some of the issues before the elections. We are also concerned about some of the issues that we anticipate would happen during the elections and after. Before the elections, what we're saying, for instance, that creates concern in our minds is these marches that I'm telling you about.
We had one yesterday.
Yes, in Abuja. That's going on all around the state. A lot of these young people who are embarking on these marches probably have not read the Electoral Act and do not know its provisions in full. And they also perhaps do not realize that elections are not won or lost marching on the streets. You know, part of the issues around elections is a candidate must get 25% in 22 states. You know, it doesn't take a critical mass in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 states to win an election. So we're putting out education around this area. And the reason why we are concerned about this is the acceptability of the eventual outcome of elections. You know, so if people do not know the rules around it, and they have this impression in their heads, and perhaps result comes out different from what they are expecting, what consequence would that have for national security? So these are some of the concerns we're having in the build-up to the election. We're also watching the deliberate use of disinformation. Madam from NBC spoke now. She talked about responsible campaign and issue-based campaign. This is exactly what we want to see. We want to see candidates assessed on the basis of their understanding of what our national challenges are as at today and what solutions they have to get Nigeria out of these challenges that are so obvious and making citizens to become very restless, you know, and unhappy. Challenges around education, challenges around employment, you know, challenges around the national economy, you know, and all of that. So let this be the issues that our presidential candidates are speaking to, because this is what the citizens expect change, you know, to happen around. In the aftermath of the election, we are very concerned that people should accept the outcome as declared by INEC, because INEC is empowered to conduct these elections, and like I said, there are rules, you know, embedded in our laws that guide how the elections should go. So we're doing a lot around this. Sometime very soon this week, we're going to be meeting with political party leaders with a view to talking to them to moderate the political communication. If they do a little comparative political communication, they will realize what sort of outcomes have followed wrong political communications in other countries. Take the US, for instance. Look at what happened around the kind of political communication we saw in the Biden and Trump campaign, and what that led to. For the first time in the history of the United States, they saw what they referred to as mutiny. You know, people entering into places that were otherwise held sacrosanct, you know, in the politics of the United States of America. So these are areas that we are really concerned about, and we're training people to know how to use social media handles. My sister from NBC spoke about the pervasiveness of social media and how majority of Nigerians are turning to that space for their information. And that place is largely uncensored. It's not like our broadcast houses where NBC can identify deviants and offenders and go after them and moderate them. Social media is so pervasive that it becomes extremely difficult to control. But that's the first point that majority of Nigerians go to for their information today.
Yes, indeed. Experts have said that Nigerians need a total reorientation, especially now that we have, you know, a larger number of the youths coming on now as registered voters. And you're saying that some of them do not even know what the Electoral Act means. And the buck stops on your table for that reorientation. How far is your reach?
Well, you see, the structure of the National Orientation Agency is already known. We're present in the 774 local government and the 36 states. Before we get to that point, what we're doing is stakeholder-focused conversations. Stakeholders that have influence, that can change the tide in terms of what we're seeing by way of political communications now, during and after, you know, the elections. So we're meeting them in batches. Like I said to you, we're going to have an engagement with political parties leaders sometime this week. With regards to the youth, you know, they are more on the social media. And so this is where we're making efforts to reach them, to let them know the far-reaching implications of political communication. There's so much bitterness and vitriol in their conversation, in their political conversation, if you are monitoring what's going on in the social media. And at the National Orientation Agency, we have been monitoring. You know, they're using videos, they're using pictures, you know, they're using texts to amplify our fault lines. Our fault lines are along religion, our fault lines are along tribe, and so on. And this is indeed worrisome. So we're engaging them in that space. We are fact-checking those videos and putting out the truth. A lot of those videos are manipulated. We're seeing instances where contesting candidates from other places are being put down. A lot of lies being put out there to influence voter behavior. So we're engaging the youths on this with regards to developing a culture of truth in the social media space.
Okay, David Akoji, thank you very much for excuse me, for your opening comments. Just to clarify, imagine that was a slip when you said as part of the voter education that NOA will embark upon, that elections are not won by marches on the streets, but by one variety of votes that is called, say, in a presidential election, and then you are also able to score at least 25% of the votes cast in 2/3 of the states of the federation. You said 22 states. That should be 24 states.
Yes.
So, but effectively, it could be 23 states and the Federal Capital Territory, or if you have 24 states without the Federal Capital Territory, you still become the winner. If you have the majority of the votes, that's plurality of the votes, as well as the required spread. Thank you very much, David Akoji. We'll come back to you. Professor Bashir Ali in our Cardinal Network studios. Let's turn now to some of the matters that have been rife in the lead up to the formal flag off of the campaigns. Fake news, hate speech, and then tap into ethnicity and religion. These are matters that would appear to be defining the preliminaries, if you may, to the formal flag off of campaigns. Is there any likelihood that these items that I just mentioned, 4 of them, religion, ethnicity, fake news, and hate speech, is there any likelihood that they might be attenuated as we get closer to voting? Alternatively, what can we do to reduce the preponderance of these elements?
Well, actually, I feel that there's nothing much we can do because it's almost too late for us to do anything. This should have been done perhaps when the social media or the internet was introduced. To put any measure now and think that we can, do something which can curtail mentioned, I think it's a big dream. Nevertheless, one of the most important things that we think about is about those who encourage this youth, especially just like what the person from the NOA said. You don't have to be an expert when you go through the social media to know that even before the formal launching of the campaigns, we know that the country is almost divided along these lines. And even before that time, like I mentioned. Now, for us to say that, okay, let us put this law into consideration, let us put this into consideration, and so on and so forth, it may not be possible. But I think one of the ways in which we can maybe forestall what may happen in the future, perhaps is to introduce, even at the primary, secondary school levels, media education, in which we can, highlight certain advantages and disadvantages of these kind of things. The youth today are growing up almost accepting that for you to be very popular in the new social media is for you to align maybe as a religious group champion or as an ethnic champion and so on and so forth. And we should not forget the fact that they are not just doing that. Many of them are not just doing that simply because they want to do it. There may be others, especially, I'm sorry to say, among some of the politicians who encourage this, who may not have the popularity that they require among their religious groups, their ethnic groups, and so on, if they do not get this kind of support from these people. So what we can do now is to perhaps the traditional media, I have no problem with the traditional media. We can, to a very large extent, curtail these problems. We are trained, but even then, we also have our own problems, which sometimes we try to avoid. Some of these media, especially, let's say, private media, broadcast media, are owned by private people, some of them politicians, and so on and so forth. I wonder what kind of control you have if the proprietor decides that this is what you should do. That is number one. Number two, we need to encourage, even if it's a bit late, training and retraining amongst our staff. And then if it warrants, NOA and other organizations should come together and see how these kind of things can be curtailed. Because, like somebody mentioned again and again, that we need to consider this country as ours, and we have no other country than this country. What we teach our youth is what they will grow up propagate. For us now to say, okay, all right, now we have realized that hate speech is not good for the country, I think it's a bit too late.
We bring in Professor Lai Osho. You know, the conversation now is gearing towards how the media space will be used, for the elections, and the social media impact in Nigeria is quite huge. And we know how to copy things. So, what happened in the U.S. during the campaign between Trump and Biden? Social media, TikTok, Twitter, especially played a huge role in the election in the U.S. And from every indication, it's beginning to happen in Nigeria. How can these people who are on the social media propagating, all this calling for violence or instigating violence or insulting political and presidential candidates be able to be cautioned? Do you think the social media should be controlled and censored?
Well, I think globally, many people are realizing the danger of unregulated cyberspace, and I think there is a global conversation. The problem is, how do we do it that you don't really, curtail the people's freedom of expression? I think that is the issue. I think for now, the Nigerian government, should try to work out some kind of arrangement with the social media owners, the big techs. And immediately we spot any hate speech or fake news, get it reported and get it removed from the space. I think that's one area that we really need to work on. We need to get the trust of the social media companies, Facebook, Twitter, and all that. Get their trust. Let them know the challenges that we face as a multi-ethnic, multicultural society in terms of the use of the social media in disseminating hate speech or fake news, all this misinformation and disinformation. And, if you can gain their trust, they will be of some kind of assistance in pulling down some of these conversations unhealthy, that are unwholesome to the political process. So we need to do that, as fast as we can, as we move into the real campaign. The other point, of course, that we have not really bothered about is the possibility of some international players, some global players, interfering in the political process, in the election. you found out in the US there were a lot of accusations of foreign countries trying to meddle, trying to influence, the process. We have never started that conversation in Nigeria, and we must realize that Nigeria is a big player in terms of our economy and all that on the African continent and globally, that many of the big powers will be interested in who becomes the president of this country. So we must also, show some concern in that area. How do we minimize, even we cannot prevent it, some of these big countries, Western countries, big countries in Asia, for instance, trying to influence the voting process in the country? If it could happen in the US, I don't see why they wouldn't try it in Nigeria. So we have this problem internally about our people, driving the campaign, using the country's front lines and all that. And also global or international, politics, big countries trying to influence what, will be the outcome of the election. And the social media is quite there. We can recollect the role played by the Cambridge Analytics in the US election, So these are issues that I think INEC and other, stakeholders in the electoral process must try to, look at and see how we can minimize such external and influences and internal influences that can distort the outcome of the election. I think we really need to take this on board in our conversation and in our planning, to ensure that we have something that is very, very, very close to the real wishes of Nigerian electorate.
Professor Osho, thank you very much for the points that you have raised, particularly also now with regard to being on guard against foreign interference in our electoral process through a wide variety of means, but more especially through the social media. We'll come back to you presently. Now, let's come back to Susan Obi of NBC. Earlier, you did say, in responding to our question, what you were trying to get away from, that there were some lapses you observed, for instance, in the recent Ekiti governorship election. In terms of either the behavior of political actors, the behavior of broadcasters, or the behavior of political supporters. What were those lapses?
Okay. We have had 2 elections this year. We had that of Ekiti, and we had in Osun. Let me start with Ekiti State. There was a social media broadcast that one of the candidates had stepped down. But then the beautiful thing that happened was that the traditional media got the candidate to respond within that 24 hours period. And they doused that information that was going around, because it was critical at that time, for the electorate to be enlightened. And then that was doused by the intervention of the traditional media. In Oshobo, we witnessed, during that bad period, 2 stations in Osun had campaigns in their news, and several times throughout the day, about a candidate, calling on people to go and cast their votes, and talked about the achievements of the party, and those were the instances we got at Osun. Prior to that, we monitored the Anambra State governorship election November last year. And we had this campaign too, where the station, there were 2, forgive my mentioning, it was the acronyms, but they changed the acronym to represent something else. Assuming it was NBC, a political party, and then we'll just use something else to represent NBC. And we'll say, okay, NBC is saying, go out. And it was made to sound as though it was a sensitization broadcast. It was as if it was just a call for people to go and vote. But they used that NBC that is known to represent a political party. The 2 parties there, the 2 key parties there, had that kind of content during that bar period. So those were the instances we got at the recent broadcast of, coverage of elections.
When you apprehended those instances, what did your commission do?
We asked that those broadcasts should be stopped. Even then, sorry I didn't mention it. I think in Ekiti, there was a message by, I think, one of the civil society organizations. It was a drama, it was a playlet. And it was in the local language that called on people to go and cast their votes and to avoid vote buying. And then one of the actors in that playlet bore the same name as a candidate. And it was like a warning, said, Susan, be careful. And then we had to say, okay, don't go ahead, pull this drama down. Because assuming it doesn't turn out in the favor of this person, it's as if you have demarketed him already. So we go ahead, and then for the commission we want the broadcasters to know what they are supposed to do.
Especially with the proliferation of so many, media outfits now, especially radio, which I'm going to come to now, and their phone-in programs. Recently, somebody 3 days ago called me and mentioned a particular radio station and said, "Can't NBC talk to them? How can they allow somebody to call in and be saying such inciting words? What is your capacity in monitoring these stations?"
The National Broadcasting Commission has 10 zonal offices and presence in 26 state offices. Beyond this, we have those who call the broadcast assessors, who monitor as well and turn in reports. We are concerned about some of the things that happen on air. That's why we encourage stations to employ the delay mechanisms, so that when there are certain utterances, certain words, certain comments that should not be allowed, it can be muffled. But we have found that a lot of stations don't have this mechanism, and it doesn't go well for them. It's not to their credit. It's required.
They have the right to free expression of speech.
Beautiful. We all know that everyone has a right to freedom of expression. As long as your freedom, we are free to extend our hands, as long as your hand in the expression of extending your hands does not hit another person's nose. So there's no freedom without limitation, and freedom comes with responsibility, which is the onus is on the broadcaster now to enforce that responsibility. It's like the other, I think Professor Pashi was saying that maybe it's late now. For us, I don't think it's late. It's never too late to make amends. It's never too late to get things right. And that is why we're having this kind of conversations, to be able to attenuate this preponderance of hate speech, fake news we're seeing. If people are enlightened to know that this is what is allowed, assuming a contestant is on air and then he goes ahead with his vituperations and suddenly he can no longer hear himself, he takes a cue from it. I know some stations have said they have conversations with guests who are politicians before they go on air, to tell them this and this. These are they lay down the ground rules. But sometimes in the heat, in the frenzy of the discussions, they get carried away. Then that's where professionalism and proper moderation comes in. We have monitored some broadcasters who have done thorough interrogation, so to draw back the guests. Sometimes when they are veering off, they call them back so that they don't lose focus of the discussion, and to let them know to concentrate on what it is that they have come for, which should be to talk about their manifesto, their candidate, and not run down others.
Okay, well, Susan Obe, thank you very much. There are a number of issues that we'll still touch on. Let's come back again to David Akoji. David Akoji, still on the problematics that we would face with respect to this election: fake news, hate speech, focus on ethnicity and religion, and non-attention or very scant attention to concerning issues of development, of progress, of an agenda for 2023 and beyond. What is the National Orientation Agency going to do in terms of assisting the populace process the deluge of misinformation, framed as fake news, or hate speech? How does a person who is not sufficiently educated process all of this, along, of course, with what Juma just raised, the kind of abuses you hear sometimes on phone-in programs on radio?
Yes. You see, like I mentioned earlier on in this conversation, political parties and politicians are deliberately setting up social media teams, that are propagating these dysfunctional narratives. What we call fake news, it just describes the ecosystem of disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation. Now, a lot of use is being made of these three concepts that I'm just talking to you about. How do we moderate it? What we think at the National Orientation Agency is it's important to capacitate the public to be able to interrogate and fact-check the information that comes to them, especially from the social media, as well as the traditional media. And so what we are doing currently is we're training people. We're building capacity of Nigerians across the 36 states. Thus far, we've trained well over 1,000 people. We've done 7 sessions and graduated 7 sets drawn from different states. What that is intended to achieve is that in every state of the country, there's a known person, who has the technical capacity to use web-based tools to fact-check videos, trace their origin to the country or wherever in the world it is that they have been taken out of and then contextualized in our present processes. Same for pictures. So this is what we're doing at the National Orientation Agency, and we're going to continue doing that. That is in addition to sensitizing our citizens to become curious, not to accept information on face value, but to seek to interrogate such information to know more about it. I will tell you this. I was actually gratified when I saw on television the other day the chairman of the National Peace Committee, His Excellency General Abdusalam Abubakar, saying that this time around, they're going to get these presidential candidates not to sign only one pact, but 2. They'll sign a commitment to peace and a commitment to using reasonable language, political communication in the entire process.
Has it ever worked?
Well, what I see is this. We need to become a bit more creative. Like I said, there's a predominance of Nigerians today on the social media, and the social media does not enjoy the extent of regulation that traditional media does, thanks to NBC. So what we are proposing at the National Orientation Agency is that the National Peace Committee, led by General Abdusalami and Hassan Kuka, should work with the National Orientation Agency and the NBC to get these presidential candidates to do a TikTok video of 1 minute, committing themselves and their followers to peaceful election and to the use of temperate language in the process of the campaign. This is critical. If that is achieved, and we have TikTok videos, 1 minute, of especially the leading candidates saying, look, I am not in support of this political communication that divides us along fault lines. I am not in support of any person who is using languages that is abusive, and that tends to amplify our existing fault lines. And I'm committing myself to a violence-free election, and that begins to circulate. Those who are following them would see this, and it will moderate the kind of caustic language that we're seeing in the political communication space at the moment.
All right, Akoji, thanks. Again, we'll return to you. Professor Bashir Ali. Professor Bashir Ali, well, in political communication, it's now become the norm, especially with the advent of social media, for candidates to provision for social media influencers. That began, we saw that first in 2011, but more prominently in 2015. And this year, in the lead up to 2023, it is doubtful if there is any candidate who doesn't have his own team of social influencers, so social media influencers. what can be done to achieve a break-in into the modalities of the operation of these social media influencers? I'm not saying, look, arrest them. I'm just saying, look, we do know now that a number of these so-called social media influencers are the sources of the kind of fake news or hate speech being generated in the first instance, and then they just go suddenly viral. What can be done? Is it the duty of the political parties? Is it the duty of the candidates, as Akoji was also saying, to echo an overriding message to say, look, I am not in support of XYZ. But regardless, we do have these gangs of social media influencers all over the place. Some of them operating from basements and all kinds of innocuous or unlikely places.
Well, actually, there's nothing wrong with that. I think the political parties, the candidates, and the electorate should come together. Thank God that NOA is doing something along the line of asking the contestants to, dissociate themselves from hate speech and so on and so forth. I have one concern. Chances are they are going to do that in English. What happens to the other languages? Are they going to be translated into different languages and then placed on TikToks and so on? Now, coming back to the question, I think since we've been able to now identify the fact that politicians are the ones who are sponsoring these ones, I think in future, if it's not late now, if it is late, fine. But in future, they should be made to register their teams so that they can be tracked. Once there is any problem, we know from where it will come from. That may be one of the reasons. Then secondly, like I mentioned earlier, the issue of training, the issue of educating the electorate is of paramount importance. Unless these teams are identified and then trained, I think this will continue. And then perhaps thirdly, I do not really support the idea of government coming in to, moderate. But let there be some kind of mechanism in which different civic societies, NGOs, and others will come and organize workshops and so on, where we discuss these issues, and then we invite the politicians and then the social media influencers, identified ones, so that we come together. And in addition to what NOA is suggesting that General Abdul Salami and his team should do, they should also be made, to always remind people that it is not a proper thing for any of the supporters to engage in hate speech, to engage in fake news, and so on and so forth. This way, they can easily be identified. And if they go on, violating the rules, then there should be some kind of punishment. Just like what the lady was saying. You see, let us take for example, even the traditional media. I know what some media organizations do when it comes to campaign. They do it deliberately. It's as simple as, okay, you will be punished and fined 500,000 naira. They can collect millions and then deliberately place these speeches, or they can violate these rules and then pay the punishment and continue. So I think what we may need to do, in addition to all this, is to look inward. And then to, just like somebody mentioned, to look at this campaign, this election, as not something which is a do or die affair. If we can do this, I think we may curtail some of these problems.
Okay, indeed, Balarabe okay, sorry, Professor Bashir Ali, you've raised some pertinent questions, but my question to you is, don't you think all hands need to be on deck, including the politicians? Because some experts say they speak from both sides of their mouth.
Politicians, let them be identified. They are the ones who sponsor the influencers, and then they should be identified. They and the social influencers, the social media influencers. Now, if I'm a politician and I have my team, I'll have to register my team so that I can easily be tracked if there is a problem with what members or what the influencers are saying in terms of negative reportage or in terms of hate speech and other things. And then if this is established, maybe there should be some kind of warning. And then, like Professor Osho said, maybe in conjunction with the international, other owners of social media platforms, we can stop the person from doing that. There's no need for us to allow somebody to be creating hatred amongst us. After all, we have 150 days after which there will be election and so on and so forth. But the country will still be the country.
Professor Ali, thanks a lot. Back again to Professor Lai. Professor Lai, as I said, we recognize the attention you invited us to with regard to likely foreign interference, and why therefore we should be on our guard. But our critical focus right now is on the domestic environment, the municipal platform, where, as we have said, a number of so-called social media influencers have already been recruited, and we are already seeing the content that they are generating. Yes, in some instances, candidates may issue disclaimers or endorsements to say, "Oh, I support this," or "I disapprove of XYZ," and so on and so forth. But what further steps can and should be taken against these so-called social media influencers, and some of them who also are talking heads on electronic media, generating hate speech, fake news, and then exacerbating our ethnic and religious fault lines? All right, it looks like we lost Professor Lai there.
Take a break.
All right, Professor Lai, it looks like we lost you there. My question is, all right, Professor Lai, we are back on.
Hello?
Hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Prof. Yes, we can.
Yes. Well, I think we need to get certain things right. These so-called social media influencers, their activities have been legitimized by the traditional media. And I'm happy that you identify them as so-called. You see, we tend to give people status that they don't deserve. And immediately we give them those status, they become very big and we're uncontrollable. So that's one thing we need to, the traditional media is, they are culpable in this. Anybody is usually, you find so many people now, oh, they are social activists, they are human rights activists. We give them all this status and they become so big, and then, at our own expense, they do all kinds of things. So I will appeal to the traditional media to be a little bit more skeptical in just, putting all kinds of fanciful names to people, doing all kinds of things. We need to delegitimize some of these so-called social media influencers because they have not been true. Some of the activities are not really good for the system. We need to delegitimize them for what they are. Two, I think we have said so much about fact-checking. We need to do more about fact-checking. Whenever they put something on the social media that we think is a little bit unwholesome, we must really expose them for who they are. This is very, very important. Let's expose them and who their sponsors are. Three, we need to understand also that some of them are not sponsored. They are just loose cannons doing whatever they like for whatever reason. So it's not all of them that are sponsored. They are working on their own, for one reason or the other. As I said, basically, a lot of them are driven by anger and emotion. They are driven by some of the challenges that the nation, is going through now. But they are not thinking of the future, that after the election, there will still be Nigeria. All of us will still be in this system. So we need to expose them for what they are, fact check whatever they are saying, and expose the lies that they are putting across. Also, Nigeria must be sensitized to the danger of hate speech and fake news. We've had experience of Rwanda. What happened? Let's constantly draw this into the ears of Nigerians, that if there is any crisis, even some of the people who are instigating, some of these very dysfunctional narratives may even be victims. So we need to really tell Nigerians, the implications of some of these things. The big political actors, the presidential candidates, and so on, they may sign agreements, fine, but who holds them to, being accountable to these agreements? They can easily say, oh, I'm not, the social influencer is not speaking on my behalf and all that, but the thing has been put on air. The thing is already in the media space. So that's why I think we really need to do a lot of education of our people. And the National Orientation Agency has to do more than what it's doing now. They really have to go out and let our people know that after the election, there will still be Nigeria. Somebody will win, some people will lose. Those who have lost, they have lost election, they have not lost everything. There's still another election coming up in the next 4 years. They will still try their hands. So we need a lot of education. I think that is the real thing, a lot of education and enforcement of rules. INEC must be ready to enforce the Electoral Act. That the provision there, from, I think, is this section 91 or so down, they are comprehensive enough to police the campaign process to the extent that we can have something better than what we're having now. So the INEC must be empowered and they must be ready. The political will must be there for them to enforce the regulation. The same thing with NBC and the Nigerian Press Council. It's like we talk so much about NBC without talking about Nigerian Press Council. The newspapers are also doing it. You now find some newspaper articles that are basically based on what they lifted from social media. And I start wondering, where are the reporters and so on and so forth?
Lyle Show, we seem to have lost you there, but we'll take a break. When we return, our conversation will begin as we begin to wind down on it. We'll be right back.
If you want to become something, become a child again. Why be a patient? If you must worry, then worry about winning. Why worry about germs? When you come home, bring tales and stories. Why bring in germs?
Shield your families from germs. When Dettol is a part of every household bucket, then you and your family can stay protected from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Everyday use of Dettol keeps my loved ones protected.
Wake up the champion in your child. Give them energy to go further. Milo Active Go and the natural goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa helps wake up the champion in your child.
You clean your teeth every morning, but that fresh breath feeling just doesn't last. The answer? Easy. You keep your teeth strong and healthy and give your mouth long-lasting fresh breath with new Oral-B 2-in-1 toothpaste. It helps strengthen your teeth and gives you long-lasting fresh breath.
So fresh, feel fresh, and feel fresh.
Stay strong, stay fresh. New Oral-B toothpaste for strong teeth and long-lasting fresh breath.
Eh?
Wait. Mama T, wetin COVID vaccine poster dey do for your domot? Abi you don begin work for those people?
Big mommy, now me put the poster there. Our teacher say COVID-19 vaccine dey safe well, and it go protect you, me, and all our family from COVID-19. Our teacher sabi road o, big mommy. Make you follow who know road.
My name na Dr. Chinonso Egemba. Then they call me Aproko Doctor. The COVID-19 vaccine na ogbonge way to take protect you and your family from wahala, sickness and death from COVID-19. Or you have to get your own free COVID-19 vaccine, sharply go any healthcare facility way near you.
The security situation in Nigeria has been reasonably stable in spite of activities of unpatriotic elements engaged in various criminal activities around the country. Daily situation reports coming in from states. 2 months ago, it has shown relative peace on many of our highways, such as Abuja, Kaduna Birnin Gwari, Sokoto, Zamfara, Kaduna.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We still have all our 4 guests with us for today's conversation. Bashir Ali is in our Kaduna Network Center. Professor Lai Osho with us via Zoom. David Akoji here in the studios, and Susan Ubi, Director, Investigation and Enforcement at the National Broadcasting Commission. Susan, I want to raise one other issue. Yes, we're talking about political campaigns and general elections and the broadcast code. One matter that we have not been able to overcome, whether it was in the Second Republic, at that time there was no code, but of course since 1992, and then of course since the advent of the Fourth Republic, we've had the broadcast code seeking to regulate the broadcast stations. One issue, as I said, we've not been able to overcome has to do with media access. States, and some would argue, federal government-owned media are denied access by the opposition. That is the claim. But in reality, you find it worse at the state level, where opposition party members and their candidates are not given equal time and equal space in the state-owned media outlets. They have a field day and people are asking, where is the regulator of the industry? Are we likely to have a change this time around?
Well, like you pointed out, that has been what has played out in the past. In some previous elections, we have had that instance. Even though regulation should be compliant driven, the commission in monitoring, when such trends are observed, there is always a form of intervention. In 2015, there was a complaint from the players in the state about their being denied access. When the commission intervened in a state broadcast station, the issue was that even the head of the station, though a professional, said that the directive he has is that every content had to be approved by the Commissioner of Information. And that made it difficult for them to take content that did not belong to their own party. Yes. So, but then this is an issue, granting access to those perceived to be opposition. But we have had to educate station owners, proprietors, that licenses are held in trust for the people, and it does not belong to them. So the code says and the law says that everyone should be allowed access to the platform to use. Each time there's that complaint, the commission intervenes and we try to get the right thing done. But like I said, it should be more complaint driven. A lot of times there's a zone that a lot of times the players are not, there's a lethargy. They don't complain. They accept as though this station, this platform will not take our content, so they go to another platform. But it's not supposed to be so. It shouldn't be so. Until they complain, the commission does not know that you have been denied access. But in the course, we advise at this moment that stations should maintain a logbook showing what allocations to contents of different parties. So the commission goes back to look at that logbook at that time. I mean, at this time. So it's advocated that and advised that stations should open up the access and allow all parties to make use of them. It's in the interest of the station. Some of these contents are paid for. The jingles are paid for. Advertisements are paid for. So the stations should make money at this time as well. So when they deny access to some of this opposition, they deny themselves of the revenue that should accrue to them at this time too. And we find out that even some of these state stations who maybe that they take content from the party in power, they don't even pay for this content. So the stations, some of them have complained.
They remind you who pays your salaries. That's David, I mean, you're talking, they remind who pays your salaries, who picks your bills. And this is payback time. So why should you expect them to pay? I mean, this is the uneven field on which all candidates are supposed to play. And now we are saying that media access remains a worrisome issue in our political broadcast. And particularly for 2023, what can be done? Dave, you want to weigh in on this?
Yes, I think that the interests of the citizen should be brought to the fore. And that is not going to happen by happenstance. We need to see an active citizenry. Citizenry that will make demand and say, no, we want to see the full picture. You can't just be showing us one side of the picture and then you're asking us to decide. Now, if you are afraid of us listening to the opposition, it means that you have something to hide. Why don't you let us hear it all and then make our decisions based on our knowledge of the complete, rather than just a part. It's easy for people to use power, for their own selfish benefit. So it takes an active citizenry who are aware to say, no, you cannot do like that. And then when the voices of the no, we want to see the big picture, becomes pervasive and predominant, then there will be no choice but to let the big picture show up. On the political terrain, we have noticed two kinds of people following politicians. Those who do not care at all about national development, but see an opportunity in a candidate coming to power as benefiting them personally. They would get whatever kind of material and position benefits that comes with a particular person, coming to power. And then the second type of people that we see, which is the desirable, are those who think that, look, this person can solve our problems nationally, not my problem, our collective problem of the economy, of infrastructure, like you said, Kings, and of education, all the gaps, that we see that are impeding progress, national progress, and making us seem as if we cannot competitively position ourselves in the Committee of Nations and take our place of pride, as the African giants that we are and are supposed to be, So there needs to be an elevated form of communication that shifts people from this side of seeing power, the acquisition of power, as power unto itself. No, power is not useful unless it is used to impact positively on the lives of the majority. And that can only come by a sense of patriotism, a sense of passion for your people and for the country. So we should assess these candidates on the basis of what is their level of proven capacity, proven commitment to nation building, and proven commitment to the people of Nigeria. So this is what I think, Kings.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me join Professor Bashir Ali. It's a known fact that the government in power controls the media in states and both on the federal level, and we can see what happened in 2015 when a change of government was coming in. The APC was there, PDP was there. We saw what happened in the media space. Would we be looking at it differently this time around?
Can you repeat that again?
About the government in power being in control of the broadcast houses and the media outlets in their state and both on the federal level. We saw what played out in 2015 with some documentaries that were aired, and so many utterances on the media space. How do you think the broadcast, industry can be able to have a level playing ground for both parties and sort of censor some of these things that will go on air?
Well, I don't think what happened in 2015 can be repeated now. There may be some positive developments. But just like somebody mentioned, he who pays the piper dictates the tune. For somebody to think, for example, that media controlled by states can give level playing ground to the opposition, I don't think that is realistic, whether in 2015 or 2023. Let me give you one example which happened, and those who are involved know what I'm talking about. A CEO of a given media organization and others paid a courtesy visit on a traditional ruler. And that CEO simply raised this issue of equal access to the opposition, that the need for that. Within 10 minutes, that person was removed from his position. I think this happened 2011 or something like that, and NBC didn't do anything about it. Now, I think we've all learned our lesson in what during the 2015 election. And I must say that the media have learned a good lesson. But if we think that we can stop all this, I don't think that is possible. Just look at what happened in some organizations. The beauty of it is that we have multiplicity of media. If the state media or even the NTA refuse to, consider your contents, you can go to another station. That is station. That is station. But to think that this issue will not arise again, I think is not correct. Yes, there are some developments, positive developments, and it is not that those who are in control of the media do not do this, do not know this. Check the NBC code. All these are there. All of the issues, most of these issues we are discussing are there. And they know it, and we know it, and people know it. But to think that we can just say, okay, since we know it, let us do it, I think it will not be something that we can easily achieve. We can still go back to the issue of education, voter education, media education. The more we educate people to know, the better. And then NBC should play a more active role, should keep tab on this kind of things happening. And then they should make sure that media stations, whether owned by private individuals or by government, comply. If they do not comply, and we see NBC taking action against these non-compliant media organizations, I think others can follow.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Bashir Ali. Professor Lai, let's bring you back again into this subtopic of media access to all, if you may. That's to say, government in power, particularly for state-owned media organs, and then, of course, to the opposition. What, in your opinion, is likely to help to reduce the heavy political disposition, if you may, of media managers who, of course, are concerned about their job security and therefore refrain from taking content from the opposition, even though the code, which is subsidiary legislation as well as other extant pieces of legislation, do guarantee that everyone should have access to the media that is, of course, held in public trust. What can be done? We're not saying that it can be eliminated overnight, but what can be done?
Well, that's a very tough issue, because if people are concerned about their survival, economic survival, about their employment, then that if those considerations override, professional ethics and professional judgment, then we are in trouble. Because at the end of the day, the media provides the platform for multiplicity of views and voices. And if you begin to consider your own, individual economic survival to the detriment of that cardinal function of the media, then, we are in trouble. So I think we really need to go back to the issue of, ethical consideration, the professional ethics of media practice, and try to get our media people, editors, reporters, and so on, to, imbibe that spirit that the ethics is very, very important. Because, as I said earlier, after this election, there will still be a tomorrow. And the media, each media organization must be concerned about survival. And what guarantees survival of media organizations? Their integrity and credibility. So if you compromise your integrity and credibility just for the moment, within the campaign will start on Wednesday, by February, March, everything will be over. If you have destroyed your organizational credibility and integrity, then how do you recover it after the election? So the survival of the organization is tied to the observance of ethical considerations, ethical codes. This is very, very important, and I think every media organization must realize that. And I think somebody said that this is a period that media organizations should see as a period for them to make money. All the actors, all the political actors will like to, enhance their visibility in the media, and that does not come cheap. So if they know that you are credible, you will treat their content with some professional respect, they will come to you, they will pay, and then you make your money. And that guarantees your survival. I think that is very, very important. So if you just want to pander to the interest of your owners alone, then if you are not careful, you'll be out of business very soon. And you can see that there are so many broadcasting organizations that are really struggling because they really not open themselves, up for multiple influences, multiple voices. Their content, their program is so narrow, that's why they are not making money and they are not making any impact. So this is a period for them to go back, reset their editorial judgment to meet the needs of the society in terms of providing that platform for different people.
Okay, Professor Lai Osho, School of Communications, Lagos State University, thank you so much for your contribution. We're actually running out of time. Now, Professor Bashir Ali, Head of Department of Mass Communication, Kaduna State University, it's been a pleasure having you on the program. And David Akoji, Special Assistant to the Director General of National Orientation Agency and Specialist in Strategic Communication. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much for having us.
Madam Susan Obi, Director Investigation and Enforcement, National Broadcasting Commission. Thank you for coming. Actually, this is just the beginning of so many conversations to come in the course of this electioneering campaign, leading to the elections. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Join us again tomorrow for another interesting edition. I am Jumai. Yes, sir.
And I'm Kingsley Salala saying, do have a nice day ahead.